So it's Tuesday, September 13th, and I've been at this for more than 100 days doing these daily updates, and I've wanted to see that Ukraine would win. I mean, I've been desiring that. But I think Ukraine is going to win. I mean, this is not, there's a shift here from, I hope that they can hang on. I hope that they can do this. I think they're going to win. And I'm going to lay out my case of why I think that in today's video. So just stick with me all the way through and you'll see why, and militarily and politically and so on and so forth. And by the way, if you don't know me, my name is Darren Gertis. Please subscribe if you're the kind of person that wants to be informed daily. Subscribe and hit that bell, and we're going to go on from here. Okay, so we're going to start with this is the UK Daily Intelligence Update, and here they're talking about the elements of the Russian forces from Kharkiv Oblast over the last week were from the 1st Guards Tank Army. Okay, now if you're not familiar with this, Guards is actually a very prominent, or like if you have the title Guards, it's one of the most prestigious things. It's like being Ranger or Special Forces or something in Russian lexicon. In fact, the guys that at Bucha, Putin gave the award to the titled Guards to the entire unit that was over Bucha. Like, I don't know if he was just trying to poke people in the eye or because he thought they did a great job or what. So 1st Guards Tank Army was subordinate in the Western Military District. The 1st Guards suffered heavy casualties in the initial phase of the invasion and had not been fully reconstituted prior to the Ukrainian counteroffensive. So heavy casualties, one, hadn't been put back together again. Okay, that's a big problem, and they had been one of the most prestigious of Russia's armies. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because I had read elsewhere that it was largely like contractors around Kharkiv area, like the Wagner Group, and so they were undersupplied or under. So if one of the most prestigious units is what was running away, that's a very different picture in this counteroffensive than what I had originally thought. I thought, okay, yeah, they ran away, but it wasn't, their crackerjack kind of unit. It was. With the 1st Guards and with other formations severely degraded, Russia's conventional forces designated to counter NATO is severely weakened, and so this is long term. They're going to be in bad shape, but I'm looking at the short term. I think they're really in bad shape, far worse shape than what we thought. Okay, counteroffensive in Ukraine, Kharkiv region is a sign that Russia can be defeated. The Ukrainian defense minister told in an interview, that they're a 6-day counteroffensive in Kharkiv, their morale was high because it was a sign that Russia can be defeated. I believe Russia will be defeated. Like, I've been studying this almost since the war began. Like a month into the war, I really started buckling down, and actually less than a month into the war, within a couple of weeks, I started paying really close attention to what was going on, tracking everything day by day, and then shooting the videos for over 100 days now. Yeah, I think they're going to be defeated. Now, a lot can happen, but all other things being equal, if we stay on the trajectory that we're on, I think they'll be defeated. Reznov also said that Russian troops suffered heavy losses, and Chechen units deployed to strengthen Russian positions were used to prevent occupying troops from leaving. Not to reinforce and fight back, but to prevent them from leaving. Okay, well, that's a different picture. Here's the Institute for the Study of War today. The Kremlin acknowledged its defeat in Kharkiv Oblast for the first time. Moscow has openly recognized the defeat since the start of February. This is the primary reason that I think that Russia will be defeated, because they've had this pattern, this history of not being able to speak to what's actually going on. Whether it's an organization, a family, a nation, if the leadership can't admit mistakes, if they can't talk to what's going on, if they just have nothing to see here, they're in really dangerous position because you can't course correct. Okay, so state media propagandists are extensively discussing the reasons for Russian defeat in Kharkiv Oblast, and a marked change from the previous pattern of reporting, exaggerated, fabricated Russian successes. I talked about that yesterday, talking about like 4,000 Ukrainians were killed in the last 5 days. Really, 800 a day as you're running away? Come on. Go back and look at that. You'll find that fascinating. The Kremlin Kremlin never admitted that Russia was defeated around Kyiv, or later at Snake Island. Remember Snake Island? They left as a gesture of goodwill. No, they didn't leave as a gesture of goodwill. They were run off Snake Island. The Russian Ministry of Defense originally offered similar explanation for the failure in Kharkiv. Again, if you can't admit mistakes, you're in very, very dangerous position. Okay, Kremlin sources are now working to clear Putin of any responsibility. So they are admitting it, but they're trying to clear Putin, which means that they still can't admit mistakes. So that's what's going on with, Putin's inner circle. They're talking about how some officers, their head should be lying on Putin's desk as if, they're to blame for all of what Putin has done or why he keeps ordering. He's calling shots in Donetsk from the Kremlin, and so that's a really dangerous place to be as well, rather than letting your commanders do things. Okay, leader of the Russian Communist Party said that they need to announce full mobilization because the Russian special military operation is a war. So, and I talked about this one yesterday or the day before. Yesterday, I guess it was. Leader of the Fair Russia for Truth Party, Sergei Minarov, called for social mobilization. Okay, so a couple of voices are now calling for full mobilization. I think that Russia can't win without doing that. I hope they don't encourage a full mobilization, because that's going to be all bad, but that is the only way that they can win at this point. Nothing in the Duma bill suggests that Putin is preparing to order general mobilization, which is, it's pretty amazing. They're going to lose unless something radically changes, and he's not going to call for mobilization, and he can't, because he can't admit truth. And if he called this a special military operation and this was just this little side thing, he can't now say, oh, wow, that's gotten out of hand, I really screwed up. So again, this is why I think that they're going to lose. Okay, next, the total territory in Kharkiv. Now, Zelensky yesterday said 6,000 square kilometers. Here we're talking about the territory in the Kharkiv region liberated from occupation is about 4,000. So it's the 6,000 figure is what's been liberated since September 1st. Across Ukraine, not just in Kharkiv, it's down in the south as well. So that's where that figure is. I'm just clarifying. Today we talked to local residents. This is fascinating. Today we talked to local residents. Russians deprived them of any connection. So they were essentially within Ukraine, but cut off from Ukraine. They could only get like Russian state media and things along those lines. They were told that Ukraine no longer existed, that there was another president in Ukraine, and that Ukraine would not come for them. Like, just trying to cut off all hope. But all our people, they all steadfastly waited, believed that the armed forces would come and free them. There's something like they have this freedom bent somehow deeply etched in their Ukrainian character or their Ukrainian national identity or thinking. So there's just something different. This is reason 3 that I think that Russia's going to lose. They are going to lose because these people are going to continue to hold out. You need to have a ratio of 1 to 40 in order to occupy in a foreign country, and they have a ratio of, I think it was 1 to 290 when I ran the numbers. They're never going to be able to hold Ukraine. So instead of trying to hold, what they're going to try to do is call for a referendum, and that's been at least pushed back, if not overturned, by this. So, okay, here we go. Next article. This is The Guardian. Collaborators with Russian forces are fleeing, say Ukrainian officials. Now, there were collaborators on the ground in Kharkiv, and there are more in Donetsk and some in Luhansk and probably some down in Kherson. But the ratio is small, and the people that are fiercely pro-Ukrainian has shifted by at least a dozen points, probably more in political polls. But there are collaborators. Ukrainian citizens accused of collaborating with occupying Russian forces in Kharkiv province and a neighboring Donbas region are fleeing. Well, but Russia closed the border after about 5,000 of them got across the border, and then they closed it off and said, sorry, we're not taking any more, which puts them in a really dangerous position. Ukrainian citizens who have cooperated with Russians are packing their loot, packing their families, and leaving, said Haidai, the governor of Luhansk, who was in the news a lot during the big battles there, who backed up his claim by posting footage of cars queuing up at checkpoints at the towns of Stansia Luhanska and Shishatsa. I'm sorry, I'm an American. I can't pronounce some of these. There were many collaborators here. Some remain, but the majority have left and went to Russia. Yeah, okay. So if you were a collaborator in this newly liberated region, there you're trying to get over the border somewhere or back over into other occupied territory because it's just not safe there. Okay, so that's just an interesting perspective. And collaborators are leaving. That tells me that's another sign. Okay, here's another one. Occupiers take their family out of Crimea. Like that's a really interesting sign to me. Okay, Russian occupiers carrying out when this began, they never thought that they were going to potentially lose Crimea, or that a enemy missile or would hit Crimea, or that drone attacks or explosions or whatever. Like they thought Crimea was safe as Moscow. Russian occupiers are carrying out an urgent evacuation of their families from the south of Ukraine, including from Crimea, occupied in 2014. According to main intelligence, representatives of the Crimean occupying administration, that is, the people in charge that Russia put in charge there, FSB officers and commanders of some military units are secretly moving their people, their children, their families, selling their homes, urgently relocating from the peninsula. This is like when a president of a company is shady, knows that he's looking at the books, knows that the company's going under, and he's secretly selling stock while he's urging people to buy more stock. That's kind of the scenario here. Reason number 4 why I think Ukraine's going to win. Ukraine claims control of entire Kharkiv residents and towns seized at the onset of the invasion. In the space of a few days, they pushed them out of 6,000 square kilometers of territory. We talked about that. Russian units have fled in disarray, said Serhiy Haidai. And like the town, they raised the town over Kremenna, which was completely empty. Like if they're fleeing, if the soldiers aren't even putting up a fight, they're fleeing, which is interesting how, according to the Russian propaganda from the other day, 4,000 enemies were killed while they're gone. How they didn't even engage them in battle, but okay, that's called a lie, right? Freshly liberated city of Izium, the city was almost entirely destroyed, more than 1,000 residents killed. The UN the other day showed that there was something like 14,000 people confirmed dead or wounded in Ukraine. The number is certainly going to rise. As they liberate, that number is going to rise dramatically. Western officials praised Ukraine's innovative and experimental military strategy when compared with Russia's, whose commanders were at times referring to decisions to the Kremlin. So it's so slow because you have to keep asking Putin, can we do this? Can we do that? Moscow is operating on the long screwdriver, and the U.S. said that it helped Ukraine with wargaming. Reason number 5, I think that Russia is going to lose, Ukraine's going to win. The Ukrainians have been so very creative. There was a Pentagon official that said on a scale of 1 to 10, the Ukrainians were a 12. And I think everything that I said have seen so far has been just so impressive. Whereas at the other end of that, the Russians, they're just so, they can't seem to innovate. And for that reason, I think the Ukrainians are going to win. Okay, next. Ukraine's advance pose a question for the world. Can Kyiv actually win? Okay, so the articles were really interesting. If you're watching from the very beginning of the war, the first few weeks, it's like, oh no, how long can they last? When will the Russians occupy? And then about a month after, after they weren't wiped out, you're starting to see it turn in the titles. So how long can they hold on? They can hold on to when they kind of push them out of Kyiv to can the Ukrainians actually win? And you're starting to see more and more of that. Yeah, I think they can actually win, and that's what's going to happen here. Okay, there seemed to be no good option apart from hanging on at the very beginning, and it could hardly retreat. The West couldn't retreat from supporting a liberal democratic order. Yes, there's corruption in Ukraine. We understand that, but they are trying to root out corruption. Yes, they have their problems, but they're trying to move toward becoming part of the EU, and they're working headlong that direction. So the West has expended a lot of treasure. The Ukraine has expended their blood. We get that. But it's not just a neutral stalemate of how long can we last. The line of argument is not worth continuing to supply Ukraine because it prolongs the stalemate is no longer an argument. This is number 6. This is the 6th reason it's not a stalemate anymore. It's like, you know what, if you just give them the right stuff, they can actually take it to them. And I think that that's what's going to happen. So that's the 6th reason that I think that Ukraine is going to win. Okay, next. Russian council faces disillusion after call for Putin's removal. This was today, and it was in Reuters, okay? And it was carried elsewhere. I actually first saw this in the South China Morning Post. And the article here is almost the same article that we see in Reuters. So I'm just going to read it from Reuters. Russian council faces dissolution after call for Putin's removal. So what happened? A group of St. Petersburg local politicians who called for President Vladimir Putin to be sacked, that's the British word for fired, over war in Ukraine, faces likely dissolution of their district council. Nikita Yusarov said the judge decided that a series of past council meetings had been invalid, paving the way for it to be broken up by a regional governor. Another council member, Dmitry Polugia, said that the same court fined him 47,000 rubles or $780 for discrediting the authorities. Okay. Not only can those in power not take blame, but you can't even speak truth to power, and that's another reason that I think that they're going to lose. You just can't function right with that kind of environment. Russians risk heavy prison sentences for discrediting the armed forces or spreading deliberately false information. You can go to jail for up to 15 years for spreading fake news in Russia, depending on the severity of it. And then the reaction or overreaction may cause more political damage to the regime than just this petition. But I have no doubts that all those who sign the petition will come under political pressure. So, look, if you can't have some kind of discussion, there's going to be a problem. Now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who is like one of the chief liars within the administration, Dmitry Peskov said on Tuesday that critical points of view were tolerated within the limits of the law. As long as they remain within the limits of the law, this is pluralism, but the line is very, very thin, and one must be very careful here. Right? I mean, like, it was almost like ominous in the way that he said what he said. So this is the other reason that I think that that's not going to happen. Okay, here is part of the same kind of thing, although it's, I think, a little bit different. Deputies from 18 municipal districts in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Kolopino have called for Russian President Vladimir Putin to resign. We, the municipal deputies of Russia, believe that the actions of President Vladimir Putin are detrimental to Russia and its citizens and future. We demand Vladimir Putin's resignation from the post of president of the Russian Federation. Now, this in and of itself is not going to have him resign, but that this is a budding movement is going to create somewhat of a fifth column ultimately over time. If you just like go far enough out in time, there's going to be enough political pressure on the inside that I think that that's going to help contribute to Russia losing. Other factors will cause it, but this is going to add to the pressure. Okay, and this is the final reason why I think now that Russia is going to lose. Here's a BBC News article. Paul Yuri, captured Britain, possibly suffered unspeakable torture, says Ukraine. So I remember this article really well. This was in mid-July, something along those lines. There was this British man who died in detention. He was captured in the Donetsk. Paul Yuri, 45, reported to have died in detention in July after being captured by pro-Russian separatists. Now, this is a BBC article, and then I'm going to show you the article at a time by Russian state media. Okay, the UK has previously described Mr. Yuri as an aid worker, which is what he was. Russia must face responsibility for his death. Mr. Yuri had type 1 diabetes and needed insulin. He died of acute coronary insufficiency aggravated by pulmonary and brain edema. Russian state news agency TASS quoted one official saying at the time. He was also, quote, depressed psychological state due to indifference of his fate of his home to his fate in his homeland. Another official claimed. That's why he died? Okay. Liz Truss, who was the foreign secretary and is now prime minister, said that he had been captured while undertaking humanitarian work, and he was. Here's the article in Pravda. I'm sorry, I said RT earlier, but it was in Pravda. And this is another reason why I think they're going to lose. They make crap up and they just like lie, and then they lie about lying, and you can't. There's one thing to lie about, like a feint, to like we're gonna attack here, but we're gonna attack there. Like there's a strategic something to it. They just lie. Okay, so here we are. British mercenary Paul Johnson, Anthony Dominique Yuri, was taken prisoner in April while trying to break through a checkpoint controlled by the DPR servicemen, the Donetsk People's Republic. Yuri was diagnosed with chronic diseases, including insulin-dependent diabetes, deterioration of the respiratory system and kidneys, cardiovascular disease. Quote, in addition, he was in a depressed psychological state due to the indifference of his homeland to his fate. Despite the severity of the alleged crime, Paul Yuri was provided with appropriate medical assistance. Nevertheless, given the diagnoses and stress, he died on July 10th, said the spokesperson. Okay, so no, that's not what happened. It wasn't because he was depressed about it. They didn't give him the medical treatment. Paul Yuri was an independent volunteer, but he coordinated his activities with one of the nonprofit organizations. He was captured with a colleague, Dylan Healy, on April 25th as they were evacuating a family from Zaporizhia by car. So he was working with a nonprofit trying to evacuate people from the area, and he was captured. And they called him a mercenary, British mercenary, Paul Yuri. He wasn't a mercenary. He was a humanitarian aid worker, and they don't make these distinctions. And I think this is part of why they're going to lose. Okay, so that's my case. I think Russia's going to lose this thing, and I'm not making any bones about it. I think it's very clear. Okay. If you're with me so far, stay with me or keep looking, because my very next episode, I identified a number of Russian state media articles from today that I'm going to reveal. I'm going to show you, like, here's how they're thinking about things. So hit the subscribe, hit the bell so that you get the notification. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares enough to actually listen and understand what's going on in Ukraine.